For helping us make these discussions possible, thank you to the Rotary Club of Mississauga Streetsville. Join leaders, exchange ideas, take action. Serving Streetsville and Mississauga since 1954. Visit us and subscribe on YouTube at MIRANET Talks and MIRANET Info on Instagram, where we bring you thought-provoking discussions with some of Mississauga's leading stakeholders. And now for our discussion with Angela Carter of the Black Health and Social Services Hub, Peel, and Gurpreet Malhotra of Indus Community Services.
All right, I'm here today with Gurpreet with Indus Canada and Angela with BHSS. And we're going to be talking about them and their groups and what they've been up to. And MIRANET has found that there are so many groups out there that have a lot of similar concerns to ours. And we've been reaching out with them, and we want to have good, fulsome discussions with them. So, Angela, why don't you take it away and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your group?
Hi, I'm happy to be here with you today, and there are lots of groups I'm involved with, so which one do you really want me to start with? I'll start with Roots Community Services. I retired just over a year as Executive Director of Roots Community Services, which is an organization that deals primarily with Black, African and Caribbean communities and other racialized groups within the Peel region and beyond, because we branched out further. And out of that, coming from the Roots Community Services, we have partnered with two other organizations to develop the Black Health and Social Services Hub, the BHSS, which you just mentioned. And that is, again, to bring now integrated services for the Black African and Caribbean communities here within Peel region. Apart from that, I'm a community advocate, I love to say that, and a social justice advocate. And I'm a member of the Metamorphosis Network, as well as the Anti-Black Racism and Systemic Discrimination Collective, plus others. So we'll get probably to talk about the others a little later. But that's me.
Thank you so much.
And a very great partner.
And you know each other very well, which
Yes.
is great. So Gurpreet, tell us about yourself and Indus a little bit, and then we'll jump in on our discussion.
It's kind of funny because I'm not retired and I do less than Angela does. But I'm happy to be the CEO of Indus Community Services and have been here 12 years. I've been in community services in and around Peel for my full 35 years of a career, and I've been a resident of Peel for most of that. So I'm really pleased to tell you that we've got three large sections of programs that we provide at Indus Community Services. One that focuses on newcomers of all backgrounds, helping to teach them English, get settled in, help find a job, get integrated better into society. Another big chunk of what the organization does is focus on South Asian seniors who may have a frailty or dementia and need to have someone that speaks the language, can prepare the food, to be able to provide them with a day program. And the third big chunk of what we do is focused on family services, youth counseling, supports to families experiencing difficulties, family court support, and that kind of thing. So those three large chunks are certainly give us a diverse view of the different gaps that exist within our systems. And I'm also the Mississauga co-chair of the Metamorphosis Network, and work on the Health Equity Committee at the Anti-Black Racism and Systemic Discrimination Network table. So there's quite a lot of overlap among those who work in the sector.
Right, and especially amongst your two groups. And of course, we thank Metamorphosis for putting in touch with you. They've introduced us to a lot of different nonprofits that are out there. And by doing that, we were able to connect and to grow our brand as well, and just create collaborations so we can help spread the word and help, just get people in Mississauga or in Peel in general more aware of some of the issues that exist, right? So we thank Metamorphosis for doing that. Now I don't want to jump right into the political aspect of things. However, we do have an election coming up, and based on that, how do you see it going forward? Where are you lacking? And I don't know if I want to say this, but which party do you see benefiting your two organizations the most?
Well, that's loaded in all sorts of ways.
It is loaded, but I mean, I just wanted to get a feel of where you guys are at right now.
As you can see, my heart is always in the fact that you must vote.
Right.
So a big part of what we have to do as organizations, grassroots organizations, is activate people so that they understand that they need to be participate. If they have the right to vote, to be able to vote. Unfortunately, a lot of our neighbors and residents in Mississauga don't have the right to vote, but they pay taxes.
That's just another something that we're all of us groups, we have the same issues, surprisingly. How do you get people out and engaged?
Well, Mississauga has been uniquely challenged insofar as it doesn't have a media center. When I was actually very upset when Rogers Cable 10 closed.
Yes,
we were too.
I'd volunteered there as a high school kid going to Woodlands, and all the way through, it recognized the benefit that it brought the community, because we talk about it. We have 1.5 million people in Peel that don't have its own TV station.
Exactly.
Shocking.
The newspapers are the Metroland, the smaller newspapers, and they're. But if we were out near Guelph or a little bit north of London, Ontario, we'd have so much more.
Yeah.
And they would still do an actual physical paper where you can't find. It's just either the Pointer or Mississauga News Online.
And that means that it's hard to get people engaged. Because that's normally learning what's happening in the community. So even though your focus is residents and our focus is community service, we're focused on the exact same person, just wearing a different hat as a good neighbor, and hopefully someone who's able to receive services when their family needs it, or is benefiting from the fact that their neighbor's kid's receiving it, or that the community itself is knitted more together. So this process that you're doing is really valuable that way.
Yes, for sure. It's left up to the community agencies really to educate and provide that information from the lack of having any media center here really. And so we've learned very well how to get together and work together to really bring information to the community, and Metamorphosis is doing that in a big way.
They've done an excellent job, really a really excellent job of reaching out,
Yes.
And we felt there was a void that was filled, and we at least began to fill, and we continue to try to activate organizations. But your question, Trevor, was which party would we?
Right. That's. I mean, you don't really have to zero in on that, but probably a more appropriate question would be, where are you lacking, and what sort of things are you looking forward to, I guess, achieving after this election occurs?
I'll point back to COVID-19. And when COVID-19 hit, we had, as we do now, a Liberal government federally and a Conservative government provincially, and then our local mayors. And one of my proudest moments as a Canadian was watching as that crisis 5 years ago, almost to the week, as we started to shut down, lock down, switch gears, learn things, worry, was that when they all gathered and worked together, the sense of, let's set partisanship aside, what is the best thing for the community? Watching that happen really warmed my heart and really drove us forward. And then actually, Angela, that's when you and I started working much more intensely together as we decided, okay, we can be at 8 different meetings in one day.
Yeah, it made things a lot easier.
And then move things quickly forward. So my hope is that as we face this manufactured crisis, emphasis on the word man, south of the border, and the pressure that puts on us here, that once again we pull together to deal with something that we've never dealt with before, that we didn't see coming, that we didn't understand why, as opposed to pick at each other. So in my heart, it's more about who is more able to work together to drive something better for our communities. That's where I would suggest people think about when it comes to voting, who could work well with others to make things a success.
Now, Angela, we as MIRANET have firmly felt that the federal government needs to get back into the housing business. How do you guys feel about that, and what do you want to see from the federal government?
like Gurpreet said, working together. Whether they come directly into doing, funding directly into the municipalities, or if they work with the provincial government, we want to see them working together. Housing is a major issue. We are at crisis stage, we know. If you can't afford to find a place to put your head at night, a safe space, it's going to increase your anxiety. It's going to increase all of the problems we are trying to remove. You need a place to stay, to be able to find a job to work, because they want to know your address, to be able to do so many different things. And, it's one of the biggest costs we have as an individual or family, and that's why it needs to be affordable. It needs to be something that people can manage well, because you have everything else to deal with then. Your food, education, everything else falls. But if you don't have a place, a steady place to be, you can't feel good. You can't, you're going to have anxiety. And what does the anxiety leads to? More anxiety end up then in the emergency at the hospital, which we're trying to reduce. So it is very intertwined. The social determinants of health is so important for a person's mental and physical health, and housing is a major one of them.
100%, and it all ties in together, right? Housing,
very much,
and food,
housing, food,
it just
your well-being,
lacking,
healthcare, all of that.
They all kind of suffer.
Yes,
so you guys focus on different aspects within the communities, within the respective communities, right? Housing, food, employment, all that sort of stuff. Where would you? I'm sure you're focused on all of these different aspects, but what would be your number one driving force for each of your organizations?
In our case, it's actually really hard to prioritize. Do we step away from supporting children who are and families that are engaged with the Children's Aid Society? The answer is no. We should not step away from that. When it comes to seniors who don't have access to long-term care, but could benefit from being in an adult day program like one of ours, should we dial that back? And the answer is no there also.
Right.
So, but your point's valid insofar as you can't do everything all the time. As much as
right, you can do a bunch of different things, or you can do one or two things completely perfect, or as close to perfect as possible.
Or you could rely on each other, and you get that, for example, as Angela heads up the Anti-Black Racism Systemic Discrimination table, that in supporting her to do that, we could help lighten her load and reach the goal. And the goal would be to have a more harmonious community, one that recognizes the unfairness and discrimination that does take place in the city, and what we can do to overcome that. And then drawing on her strength as she provides advice to the leadership team as to what we can do to support agencies, so that agencies are able to better support their communities. And a key concern, for example, federally speaking, would be around the settlement of newcomers.
Right.
Are we getting the right amount of resources given the number of newcomers that come to Peel? Because very often, any of us traveling will say we're from Toronto.
We can't say Mississauga. Most people will not know where that is.
We would if we happened to
Right,
see each other,
right.
but
Yes.
we're not going to know that until. And if we did figure out that the other person knew, we'd say we quickly changed from Toronto to
100%.
Mississauga,
And we might
right?
even get more specific.
Dial
That's
it
right.
down,
Poor
right?
credit, I'm
Yeah.
here in Streetsville,
There
and
you
off you
go.
go, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The same is true for those who are coming to the country for the first time. They're not coming to Mississauga or to Brampton. They're coming to Toronto. They're getting off the Toronto airport, which is located in Mississauga. And then they may never even touch Toronto, but sometimes immigration settlement dollars is following them to where they aren't, which means the
Right.
resources are placed more in Toronto. Or they're in Toronto for 2 weeks with their cousin, and then they move out here, or even further afield, depending on what they can afford, as they get their life going and get things started. What we want is to make sure that the settlement dollars, education for language training, job search, as well as a straight up settlement for refugees, as well as immigrants in all classes, that is properly divided up, so that Peel, Mississauga, gets its share to be able to help those people succeed. Because 52% of the people living here were born outside of the country.
Right.
So we know it works. We know support turns into success. And so we want to make sure that we're not being shortchanged there, as we've seen in many provincial programs.
And as you know, in Peel here, we do get less money than other municipalities. Why do you think that is, Angela? And what should we be doing about it?
Well, these are decades-old issues. We don't know the genesis of it, but when Peel started to develop, it was left behind. And I guess because we're always in the shadow of Toronto, we don't know. However, Metamorphosis Network, when the announcement for the dissolution was made, we immediately formed and looked at that, and we produced a report that talked about and showed in no uncertain terms that we are $868 million a year underfunded. Of course, when we took it to the government, it was like, oh no, where did that come from? We don't know about that.
Those numbers don't sound
the
right,
numbers
yeah.
are obviously big.
Mm-hmm.
And we are asking them, we don't want you to tackle the $868 million one time, but at least acknowledge that there is a problem and put a plan in place to help fix it. So we are pushing them right now on that. That's the issue we are looking at. How can we work together to find a way to reduce this disparity in Peel? We have a very high, as Gurpreet said, immigration population, very racialized. So the needs that are of our community here are greater in some cases than others, because we have to bring them and work with them from various cultures and stuff to bring harmony within our region. And that's what we aim to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we need more funding to do that. We need proper funding to do that. Mm-hmm. And if we're constantly behind, we're not going to. So that's why we work so closely, because we all get together and we work together and see how can we make sure that our community does not suffer.
Right, and many of the issues are going to be...
Our issues are similar with different... Yeah. We work with different demographics,
Right.
because we know where they're coming from and their background and their culture, but the issues are similar.
Mm-hmm.
We just do it in a different way to manage from a cultural perspective. But the settlement, education, and then on top of that, we have racism that we need to deal with as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the education, healthcare, all of those things we need to deal with.
So you mentioned that was a big number, 800 plus million.
Every year.
Every
Annually,
year.
yes.
Now, I don't know if you can break it down, but where is the biggest discrepancy in terms of funding?
So that works out to $578 for every man, woman, and child in Peel.
Right.
And this is social service. This is not even infrastructure as well.
Right.
So it's not hospitals.
Right.
It's not primary care. So it is the largest single chunk would be healthcare.
Okay.
Yes.
But that's secondary healthcare.
Yes.
For example, mental health and addiction support. Support for long-term care, support for seniors and adult day programs.
Intimate partner violence.
There you go. And then it all of these areas, $578 that you've paid in your provincial tax bill.
Right. That you're not receiving.
That you're not receiving.
Right.
And so that's the point that we've been making. And so when we gave this to government and said, check our numbers, because we got them from you, from government,
Yes.
check our numbers, call us back, tell us if we made a mistake. That was now almost a year ago. And
no acknowledgement that
Well,
you were in
An
error.
acknowledgement to some extent.
some acknowledgement, no, you're right, no acknowledgement that we've been in error, but some acknowledgement that there's a problem and it needs to get fixed. So, and they want a realistic response. Like we said, like close to $1 billion every year is a lot of missing services and programs that you don't know about, but you don't feel because you don't have a twin in another part of the province who needs the exact same service at the exact same time and somehow gets it much faster than you do. And so then you don't really see that you're missing that, but you do see that it's missing from your account. And you're assuming that it's being divided up fairly.
It's being done, right?
And my perspective is always, again, going back to the federal government, if they start getting back into the business of building, homes for those in need, there's going to be more money left to come for other services,
But
right?
the
If there's
federal
more
government
money.
gives the money to the provincial government that's supposed to then pass down.
Exactly.
So there is something between the federal and the provincial government that we need to sort out. Why, they pass it to the provincial. Why is the provincial holding it or not using it
And
appropriately?
I want them to just come in and not just pass it to provincial. I want more
Directly
coming in for housing.
Yeah.
That is something they need to work closely on and really sort out. Especially at this time, with this, they're trying to break down interprovincial barriers.
Right.
This is a great time to look at that.
It's a great way to do that. So you mentioned federally, you mentioned provincially. How are we doing on the municipal side of things? In terms of support and funding and so on.
It did get strange for a little while when the dissolution was on the table. Literally on this table, we had the parties all attend and talk to each other, and so it really got divisive, and I'm hoping that division has been resolved. We have a new mayor in place. She's definitely active and concerned with moving things forward for communities, neighborhoods, community groups, and the like. So that's great, and so I think. A bridge has been rebuilt,
right.
But for a little while there, it felt like it was being burnt down between the two because there was a talk of transfer of power.
Exactly, and it seemed to me that the region really was struggling. And if the region is struggling, how is that helping you guys? It's really not. And they lost a lot of really good personnel as well.
Yeah.
That they're trying to rebuild back up.
Those who rushed to leave and left a hole behind. At the same time, we can find there are a lot of smart people in Mississauga, and we would be able to if you will retool and fill those gaps and move forward. But on the municipal level, it is difficult when you're trying to get a program set up. Say you're focused on a youth program, and you'd like to have the library and potentially the police and social services interact to be able to provide a supportive program to that young person. You're talking to 3 different bodies. Right. With 3 different ways of doing things. And that's a lot harder than it would be for the same community group to go to the City of Toronto and say, okay, you've got 3 departments, but you're at least all under the same flag, as it were.
Yes.
And you speak in the same talk.
Yeah. And you might have been in that old division, and so that's it's a little easier to move forward because you could get these 3 different bodies, and that's just an example, lined up quite quickly. Right. While here it's you got to go through 3 different bureaucracies, and that's tiring.
It's tiring. It can be frustrating. Like you're spinning your wheels and you're sending the same message out over and over again, and they're not quite connecting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's one significant challenge. Other than that, though, we've had terrific support on our recent campaign, where we talked about us Mississauga residents getting less than half. The city of Mississauga was able to provide free advertising for that. The region of Peel has been financially supporting the Metamorphosis Network. Same with the United Way to Greater Toronto. So we end up in a place where we continue to try to build with what we've got. Very much a stone soup kind of a way to things. I don't know if you know the reference.
Yes.
I've never heard stone soup.
The idea is you bring what you can.
Yes.
Okay.
And together, with the little bits that we
get a
each
little
have,
bit to eat.
we can actually make something
A dinner.
quite interesting. Yes, there
A
you go.
potluck.
There we go.
A potluck.
So how do you feel, Andrea? Do you feel that the region and the city are back on a good footing, or are we still struggling to get back to where we were a couple of years ago?
Well, I think a couple of years ago, there was a change in mayorship and stuff, so we have to factor that into consideration. As Gurpreet said, this mayor she's very socially conscious, that we could say, and she stands on her principles, even if sometimes she may say something that upsets someone, but she stands on her principles. And I take, for example, she stepped down from being on the police services board because she could not agree with the large budget that we all had a concern with. And she did something about, she stepped down. So I think that I think there is a better cohesion within the region, the 3 municipalities plus the region. I think they're working together more, I think. And hopefully that, that continues, because I think they are working better. But who knows?
Yeah.
We'll wait and see.
Wait and see. I think we need to see how this settles down with the federal elections as well.
Why don't we discuss the new campaign called One Mississauga?
All right.
Okay, that's I actually did something for just a clip on CBC the other day. They asked about it. It's One Mississauga trying to combat racism, systemic discrimination, hate crimes within the city, and they have some large posters that will be on billboards and stuff. And here you can see that talk about taking some of those things that people say and trying to turn it around. So, for example, go back to where you come from. Someone would say, "You mean pork credit?" Right?
Yes.
So things like
I
that.
saw that there was a gay one. I saw.
There is a gay
I thought
one.
that was very interesting. It was actually very cutely done.
Yes.
It was. Yeah.
So we are hoping that this would, and they're hoping that it would generate dialogue and make people think about what it is they're saying and see that, well, as we said, many people here are from somewhere else, not just,
But aren't we all?
Right.
It doesn't matter how many
Right.
generations you go
ago.
back. We're from
Right.
somebody
Somewhere
else
else.
originally.
Yes. And so the campaign, I think, is great. We're just hoping that it wouldn't cause more division, but cause that, that there will be dialogue. We're actually having them come to speak after it's run for about a month and a half, coming to speak at our Anti-Black Racism and Systemic Discrimination Collective meeting in June, which is first Monday in June. And they're going to come and give updates on how the campaign has been and how it's done, how it's being rolled out, and also for next steps. Because what next after this is what we want to know. Hopefully, it has dialogue, and they bring people together to discuss what it means and how it can change, and how the city can change because of this campaign. So we are really, it's great. It's great to see them stepping out to do this.
Yeah, it sounds like a really great initiative.
Yeah, because hate crimes have risen 32%, as they said, within the last 23 over 22, because the results came out earlier this year. So 32%.
Why do you think that is, Gurpreet? What's behind that?
The racism or the hate crimes?
Yeah.
In part,
I find that very shocking.
in part, it's being a global conflict. If you're watching on television, the families on whichever side you can identify
The division.
with,
It's
right?
the division, yeah.
That angst, that anger, there's a sense of that you need to do something about it, or you feel incredibly helpless, and that, if not channeled correctly, can turn into an outburst that hurts someone here who is completely innocent of whatever bad deeds are happening on TV
Elsewhere.
and the rest of the world.
I think it's important to try and figure out how to isolate specific, like our community, say for example, because I think a lot of this is global. I think a lot of this is global, right? I think a lot of countries and a lot of people living in different countries, right, have kind of done that same sort of division thing where you're on this side or you're on that side. There's been a push in a lot of countries about immigration and closing doors and all that stuff. And I think it's probably trickled down from the top right down to smaller communities, such as Mississauga, say.
But people don't, people still have ties to their home countries.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to really sever that when you go to somewhere else. So you have those ties. Unfortunately, if you're bringing that with you. So if you're from various countries and any two countries at war with each other, you're bringing that. And unfortunately, we need to find a way of how we can allow people to have the discussions because they need to speak about it, but in a way that is not hateful or that will cause strife. And we've been seeing some of that, right? And that's what we need to work. How can we work on that here? To provide people an outlet, they need to speak about it. We can't, we can't tell you don't say anything. You're tied to your country.
But it seems like we're regressing. I feel that we've gone back.
One of the other things the police is saying,
50 years ago.
One of the things the police is saying is that they have been, encouraging people to report. So that could be one of the reasons as well that you've seen an increase.
You're seeing an increase in numbers.
So
right?
it could be many different things that people have really reporting more, right? They feel better to report more, but there's also more. But one thing I say for the Black community, ours has been consistently high. It does not change. So while there might have been spikes and an increase for certain groups from a racial perspective, if you look at the stats for the last 3 years, they're consistently at a high level for the Black community. Because we get it all the time. We get it. From the time I've come to this country, 36 years ago, we always have that racism and hate crime against the Black community.
How does that compare with Indus?
Well, the South Asian communities are very diverse in their own right. That's one piece of it. And the more you have diversity, the more people have to actually grow to understand each other. And sometimes they take a lazy shortcut to something that then leads to harm or leads to a misunderstanding, and then that can grow. As a community agency, our focus is there is no community without unity. The idea that you need to be able to get along a bit better. Multiculturalism is harder than monoculturalism. We've tried monoculturalism, or parts of the world have, and it did not go well. But multiculturalism means that you need to be open to the other person, to be open to the difference, and accepting of the fact that someone else can be different. That doesn't mean they're wrong.
Right.
It just means that they're different.
Right.
And then as you grow more comfortable with that, as I think we all have, you find yourself more able to not take offense and not give offense because you're that much more exposed. I find racism grows in places where there is not mixing, there is not each other's.
And that's why I'm so shocked, because Peel is like the biggest in Canada of multicultural,
I think even this neighborhood, even in Cooksville, I'd love to do the research. Is the most multicultural neighborhood, I'm only going to say the country, and then have someone challenge me with good research.
Numbers are wrong,
right. So
I can see that though, because if you think there's like a melting pot of so many different, where you go to Malton and it's more one or two,
black and South Asian.
It was Italian, and it became black and South Asian. Yeah.
But here is really mixed.
It's everybody. And I've worked out of this building here in Cooksville for almost 12 years, and frequently enjoy walking around the neighborhood to have either a walking meeting or go get some air. And you see people of all sorts of backgrounds. Now, honestly, there's a lot more focus on food on the table, get things done. I'm not here to have a conflict. But I've not seen conflict or difficulty or challenges between people. I've seen things that are not going right for a person. I've seen people in distress. I've seen people who need help. But I haven't seen people who wish to harm others just because they're different. It's like, look, you go about your business, you go about yours, I'll go about mine, and peace be with you as I do that.
Well, you touched on something when you said, like South Asian, for example, right? I think you really need people in general, and it doesn't matter what background you are, but you need a willingness to educate yourself about the world, right?
Yes.
Because I know when I grew up, anyone who was, say, brown skin, when I say brown skin, I mean South Asian, they were all from one spot.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Nope.
Right? There were so many different cultures and backgrounds and countries within that classification of a brown person that a lot of people they're not aware of. I don't know if it's through lack of their own education or just maybe they're just ignorant of the fact and don't want to learn. But West Indian, for example, this is not the same. It's not the same.
No, it's not.
Right? Jamaican is different to Trini, is different to Guyanese, is different. They're all different. They're not monolithic.
That's right.
Right? And I think a lot of people really need to understand that. Because then if they don't really, what you're doing is you're just lumping people into one specific category. And it doesn't cover it.
And within each one of those categories, and every one
It breaks
of
down
all
even
of
more.
us, you've got among them the jerk, you've got the kind individual, you've got the helpful person,
Right.
you've got the very stressed person having a bad day,
Right.
you've got people.
People
they're
will be people.
There you
Doesn't
go.
matter
But-
what
Yes.
your skin color
And
is.
if you can get past that and
Yes.
realize, take the temperature down.
Right, right.
Realize they're also getting the same media, feeling stressed about this.
Yeah.
There may be other things on their plate. Cut someone some slack, because sometimes you need someone to cut you slack.
Right.
And the more we have of that kind of feeling, the more you have an understanding that, you know what, breathe. I can deal with whatever this minor crisis was, and let it go, and not let my own stress turn into the reason for why I now don't like that kind of person, or
Yes.
need to say something.
Cooksville is like Jamaica. That's,
Go on.
Yeah.
Out of many, go on, you
Yes.
got to say it?
Absolutely. You go right ahead.
Out of many, one people.
One people.
But in Cooksville, I'd go a little further. I have to tell you that Cooksville has been underserved. Our library
Yes.
is
You had mentioned the
incredibly
library
small.
when we
Yes.
talked previously, and
Yes.
I noticed the library at the top of that building.
Yeah.
The second floor
And
over
you
next
said
door.
it's the same library that's been in existence for
As a kid, I used to come here to the Central Library.
right.
And the Central Library was a hub, as this was effectively Mississauga's downtown.
Yes.
And that's been long gone, demolished, and the townhouses are supposed to be built there still haven't arrived. So that's a separate collection of issues. But what about the community investment in this neighborhood?
Yes.
We know it's high needs. We know that from our my work at on the Collaboration Council for the Mississauga, Ontario Health Team, based out of Trillium Health Partners, that we have a great need here in Cooksville. There are health outcomes that are more challenging here than in other areas, but what is in place to support that? What has the city or the region or the province done to support this neighborhood?
Sue, sorry, is there even a ratepayer organization or group in Cooksville that you can think of?
No, the closest is Athena's group.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just over more by.
So
lower.
we have the same challenges because even within Cooksville, as Sue mentioned, there are no ratepayer organizations or associations within this particular region, and that's not a plus, right?
No.
You know.
It's not. It also indicates, it ties into head down,
Yeah.
Right.
get
Yes.
food on the table.
Right.
Yes.
I can't vote anyway. So if I can't vote and politics from the old country was not something to trifle with, then you're kind of losing someone for a few years. And it's really important that actually these communities, because I find them as engines for the city. Well-off, middle and upper middle class neighborhoods are not where newlyweds move into, not where our kids graduate school and then rent an apartment in, are not where someone newly arrived are going to be able to settle in, or someone maybe going through a divorce is going to resettle
Right.
in. That's not. This is where that will be.
So we used to get a lot of development charges when we had, buildings done, and that development charge usually got spent in the community. How do you feel about the way it is now with all these buildings going up along Highway 10, and yet we're not going to get a lot of development charges any longer?
And
How can you try to pull stuff and get stuff from the government now that we should have been as of right?
Yeah.
i.e. a school going in, as more buildings go in, putting pressure on local
Parks.
schools. Parks supports the community.
Library stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Community centers, space for people to meet.
Yeah.
That's been a struggle in Cooksville. Where do you meet? This room is probably one of the largest available rooms for local groups to meet in. The libraries is about a third of the size. Where else do you go? Perhaps the basement of the local United Church if they make it available.
So
to
how
you.
do you get more when you've got all these developers coming in to make all this money with all this height? How do you get a share or a portion of
Well,
it now?
it'll be important because we'll need to work with MIRANET to be able to see what we can do with the new residents,
Yes.
as well as those that are here, and then of course those who are being displaced from here, and what their story is, to be able to see what we can do together, to be able to get people aware that getting involved is how you build a better community. It will be sad that when the community was poorer, younger, newer, that it didn't have the resources it needed, but as it becomes richer, more established, more condoed, if you will, that we then will have services put in place. It's
But
sort
again,
of like
you
that didn't work.
displaced-
That
And
that
you
didn't work.
displaced the lower,
That's
just
right.
like in Port Credit.
Gentrification.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's a big issue too, right? Because if you have all this development, I mean, a lot of the development is going to be, there's going to be rentals included in that, right? So they're going to disappear, and then the people that are displaced,
Yep.
where they're going to
Where
go?
do they go?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the problem right now.
Homeless.
That's why I always say, I go back to the federal government has to get into the business of building low-income housing. Because if they don't, these developers are not putting it in. It's just, it's not showing up.
Well, there's no financial incentive, right?
There's none.
No, well, they want to make money.
They want to make money, right?
I think the last time that we really had any kind of affordable housing being built was when under the NDP government back in the early 90s.
Bob
Remember
Ray.
that? Yes, when he had opened up because I know nonprofit organizations were able to build affordable housing
Yes.
for the communities, which then got him rolled into be part of Peel Living. But yeah, that was the last time I think they had any kind of focus. I may be wrong, anybody can correct me, but I think that's the last time they had any kind of focus on real affordable housing.
Yeah. Well, they got out of the
not
business,
affordable
right?
housing
They
right
got out
now.
of the business.
Yes.
Well, we had Ontario Housing,
Yes.
and that was long defunct, right?
Right, but
Um,
was it real?
It was.
That was part.
It
Wasn't
was.
that still
Mhm.
under the NDP? That was
Yeah.
because after Mike Harris came in, a lot of that went through the Edos. A lot of that was scrapped.
Yeah.
So the federal government, the provincial government have walked away.
Yes.
And what we're saying is we need to have government, if they're going to deal with housing challenges, especially homeless people, they need to have a deeply affordable housing.
Right, and
Yes,
it's because,
and
I mean,
yeah.
that's really, as you mentioned, that's really the only way. It's
Yes.
got to come, it's got to be three-tiered, right? Otherwise, you're just going to keep building and building, and you are going to achieve your goal of building more houses.
But who's
they're
gonna
missing
live
out.
there?
Well, they're missing out the word, the
Yeah.
first word, which is affordable.
Affordable.
Yes,
It's
the
just not gonna
affordable
be
is
there.
not there.
Yeah, it's not
And,
going to be
and,
there.
and Mississauga is largely built out. So there's not a lot of, if you will, green fields to be able to
going
go
up.
out to say, okay, well, just north of this, north of Air Mills Town Center, we'll do that. And it's like, well, no, that's already been built
There's
up.
already- yep.
So now what do you do? So now
They
it turns
just-
into what kind of a city do we want? Do we want one that people can't afford to live in? And the option is, well, if you starting out in Mississauga, best to move to Milton. That's not the answer
It's not
because
an
we'll
option.
lose
Yeah.
our young people, our newly arrived, and those who have more modest means. And losing them to a city
Yeah.
is not a good long-term plan.
Yeah, I know, because in a lot of cases, you're losing skills,
Yeah.
right? You're losing, using a younger demographic, right? That could be contributing and supporting the city that you're living in.
Yep. Culture, arts,
Yeah.
activities that are a lifeblood to a community, and that you need to have that mixing take place. And
You need to have that overturn.
That's right.
You need-
And a
you know.
neighborhood like this is able to do that. If you had supports in place, you'd be able to help people move through it more easily and successfully.
Angela, are there any specific neighborhoods that you tend to focus on more?
We focus primarily here in South Commons
Okay.
area and Meadowvale.
Okay.
Well, Malton, of course,
Malton.
is one, and then over by Acorn, on that is Eglinton and here,
Yeah.
Ontario. So yes, so there are some pockets that we focus on where we see, again, there's great need.
Need.
Yes.
And I think
And not proper services. Well, South Commons had a really good library which is under renovation now, has been
Yes.
for a while.
I was going to say, how many years now?
Yes, right. So that was a real central place.
Mhm.
So it's really, there's not much.
And it was actually quite a good center because it was quite big.
Yes,
Yeah,
it,
it
yes,
was a
yes,
swimming
it
pool
is.
and-
Yes,
Yeah.
They had a swimming
So
pool and a
hopefully-
gym and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
Hopefully
and
it's-
meeting rooms.
Yeah.
And,
yes. Hopefully it comes back to be much better than what it was, but it's now left a dearth.
How do you feel about how Mayor Parrish is doing? Because I truly believe that she is trying to get housing for low income, and it's a struggle dealing with our provincial government.
Yeah, I think she has. I think what I've seen since she's come in, she's trying to bring more unity to the city, but there's still not a lot of outward focus. I don't know. I'm not. I don't see. Martin Reed is out in the community a lot. I think she pushes him out and he goes out. I don't see a lot of the others doing that kind of outreach into the city. And I think we need more of that. I think we need to see more of the councils getting out and bringing people together. They're not. They have their event in the summer or some other time and tell people come to a whatever. You go and what? You know, I find it superficial.
Yeah, it's.
We need more. We need more community building. We need them to be working with community agencies actually and doing this work. Like here, how often do you see your councillors? I don't know if you see them a lot. We don't see. Let me just say,
Well,
I don't see in Mississauga, and I live over by Erin Mills. I hardly see any of the representatives from any of the levels of government in that area much. Right? You have to go out to them.
or invite them to something.
You know.
I see Councillor Fonseca at events at the Dixie Bloor and in the area on a regular basis. We have some councillors that are actively in the community connecting, and we have others who aren't.
Right.
Who choose to be disconnected, choose to have. It almost feels like their own agenda, and it's like, well, how the alignment between community services, residents associations, and a municipal politician are the alignment is so clear for me to see. We have three different roles to play, but we at the end of the day want to see that family, that taxpayer, that unit comfortable, enjoying life, and feeling they're part of something that welcomes them and supports them.
It's funny.
I was going to say, sorry, it's really the messaging, right? So we see them a lot, from time to time, but it's only about the feel-good stories. It's not about this is my achievement, this is what I've accomplished, this is what I've done, but it's never about
this is tough.
There's some issues here that we really need to address. You don't really see that much, and I think it's more. There are some councillors that are just doing it for the pat on the back. They're not really telling you or dealing with the real issues, and I find that to be.
And it's funny you mention this because I just had a meeting at the end of last week with a couple of councillors, and this came about because of a deputation I did at the city a few weeks ago, and the whole idea of getting together with these couple, because they're the ones that said that they'd be interested in getting together and having a discussion and figuring out how to have a bigger discussion with residents, engaged residents and resident associations, because there's a disconnect. There's a huge disconnect with the city and getting their message out. They're trying, but that messaging is not getting out. Even to the resident associations, it's not getting out. So then you get people who go to council at the last second because they just heard, there's something going up. Yes.
And they're not prepared.
And they're not prepared, and it's too late. And I said to them, this happens time and time again. We have to figure out a way of getting messaging out better and reaching out to not just the resident associations, but connecting with our residents. And then I said after this meeting, I would like to do that with community groups, because all the community groups, even though they're all different, there are some key issues that connect us all, which we touched on.
Absolutely, and so
they were amenable. They want us to come back with a list, figure out a list, and then give it to them. But again, we have to push.
Yes,
we have to push.
And that's not community development.
No.
That's the community saying, look, you've missed something here that you need to help fix. It's like, well, no, go get us a list. I want to see who's on that, and is that committee going to challenge me? So there's a great comfort in not having that media center focus
Yeah.
on them.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
that needs to be
It
brought
allows
there.
them to slide.
In the dark.
Well, it
Yes.
helps. It helps when your coverage is basically secondary because, I mean, I guess municipal news does reach Toronto in the various media outlets,
But
they
enough.
don't deep dive
No,
into
not
it.
at
So
all.
it's kind of and in Mississauga today, and then it's kind of
And it's not followed, so you don't see the trajectory,
100%.
and you're not able to then see that. Hang on, there's a game afoot. How did that happen? We are all keenly aware of the next Toronto budget or the last Toronto budget,
Yes.
and we all saw what was happening and what the debate points were, whatever. But was that true for the police budget
Yeah.
or for
No.
the city or
No.
the region
And
budget?
I
Nope.
made a deputation saying, yes, I recognize the need for more police, but not a 9% increase on our taxes. It's the wrong time.
Yeah, we did the same
it's-
thing at regional council.
Yeah, that's what the deputation was. It was very. So I think there's just that we need to be able to hold their feet to the fire, but it's very hard to do that in a vacuum.
And that's why this is a really important new tool for you to be able to build on, to be able to make the point and raise the flag on
100%.
the
And that's
issue.
what we're hopefully
And draw,
going to achieve.
draw people in to say, yeah, that matters to me too, and what can I do to help? That kind of a thing. And then when that starts getting generated, all of a sudden we may get more municipal politicians focusing.
And being
That's the
true,
hope.
and being truly engaged.
And transparent.
Yes.
Transparency is
Yeah.
huge as well,
And
right?
engaged.
That's a big
Yeah.
word. I
Yeah.
use that an awful
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Open and transparent.
Yeah.
So let's ask this, because this is a little bit kind of off the topic that I thought we would be talking about. But how do you guys feel, or what do you think we could all do better together to try to get more movement at City Hall?
Honestly, they're used to, any level of government is used to its usual suspects, i.e. the people they fund, showing up and saying, we're not getting enough funding. What I find works better is the not usual suspects. So, you have a residents association concerned about something. What if the community group went with you to City Hall? We're looking at expanding a program on something. A resident group comes with a community agency to go to a city or regional council. The different allyship,
Right.
the usual suspects kind of a thing, I think can really get their attention to say, hang on, you don't just have
You've
an
partnered.
agency.
You've partnered with different.
Well,
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's the same person, client, resident, taxpayer, whatever label you want to, voter, whatever label you want to put on that person, it's the same person wearing those different hats.
We did that, I remember, with the community center, Liscar, and up in Ward 10, because a lot of people didn't want to give them all that money for the community center up there. And people had reached out to us, and we went and we did deputations in support of that.
Yeah.
Because again, that community had a very high South Asian
Population.
population there, and they asked for our support, and we gave it. So that was really important.
I agree. Collaboration is key. Is one of the key components. Working together, because I think we work too much in silos.
Right.
And I mean, yes, it happens because we're so busy and we just put our heads down in what we're doing. But I really do think city councillors are supposed to be representative of the people, right, of the constituents, more so than the provincial MPPs and the federal MPs. The city councillors should be out in community, and I don't see them very. Well, let me rephrase.
Not enough.
I don't see them
Personally,
out there
right,
enough, right? And I think they need to get out more and really have discussions. They can call in groups, leaders of various groups within their constituency, to say, hey, let's come together and have a discussion on whatever.
Right. And as
You
long
know?
as the discussion is true at heart.
Right.
It's not just a discussion to check a box to say,
Right.
well, we've had the
Because
discussion.
must should have follow-ups.
Right,
And
because
there's
you have to be
a lot of
talking.
that.
I was
there's a
gonna
lot of
say,
that.
yeah,
You-
right,
There's
that's
a
why we
lot
need
of
that
that.
follow-up.
Oh,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had a community meeting. 14 people showed up. I call real people.
Right.
Showed up, and really, and based on that, you've made all these
Good
other
decisions.
decisions.
And
Right.
again, that's
Right.
our
Yes.
big problem with
And-
the city.
and that's not
because-
what we want.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like the official plan.
Yeah,
They would say, well, we did this, and this, and I thought, you had 10 people in a room and you consider that, or you did an online and there was 20 people there, and that's representative of, it's not enough.
And it doesn't serve, at the end of the day, it doesn't serve the community well.
No.
Because there are less people to be excited about it, less people to understand why you did X versus Y, so therefore maybe even complaint, but now it's far too late. And so then it just
Yes.
turns into all you're doing is whining. It's like, no, it's because you never engaged with us in the first place.
But again, the city will say, oh, yes, we did.
Yeah. Or we put
but-
it on the website and tell
Right.
you tell you to go in there and
Yeah,
make
yeah.
your
So-
Or a sign goes up for 3 days telling
Yeah.
you that on the 4th day there'll be a meeting about
Yes.
new
And they-
development.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Who are you
Right.
fooling?
Well, see, I mean, that's another thing. There'll be a
And that's a
meeting.
real bee in our
Well, yeah, I
bonnet.
mean,
Yes.
we're going to meet and we're going to talk about the new development. So that means, I mean, and again, we asked the question as to why people aren't engaged enough, right? And it's examples like that as to why people aren't engaged. You're telling us about a new development. You're not seeking our guidance or our counsel
as to-
or anything like
so in
that.
the first
You're
place
just telling
anymore.
us.
that co-designing thing, right?
And that was
Yeah.
one of my points the other
Yes.
day with these counselors. The city used to ask our opinion ahead of time, but we used to do lots of roundtables. You guys must remember that.
Yeah.
They used to do like 100 or 200 resident and community
Yes.
groups. They would get
Town hall.
together
Yes, the town hall
in
meetings, yes.
somewhere in the city, and we don't do that anymore.
And
I haven't been to one of those meetings in years.
And you look at Cooksville, we don't even have a forum that we could easily do that in.
Right, right,
We
right.
could potentially take over the high school gym if
Yeah.
one bureaucracy wants to sort that out with another bureaucracy.
And even at City Hall, though, I mean, they could be a room there for you up on the, the
yeah.
top floor.
And
even.
city, that's one of the hardest place to get
Yeah, but
space in.
see, that's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
it.
One of the hardest places to get space.
And speaking of space, another issue that boggles my mind is that when it comes to the summertime, our seniors groups who are in rec centers are moved out of the rec centers
Yes, for the
in
summer.
favor of the kids who are at camp to
Yes.
come in. Don't have a big beef there, okay, but then the school that those kids was in sits empty,
Right.
and those seniors are
Seniors.
nowhere. And we paid for all of that. And it's like, well, wouldn't it make sense to maybe run a summer camp out of every third elementary school, and
Yes.
then maybe leave the seniors in the rec center?
But they don't take up all the space. They just take up, right?
There-
Let's face it, those
Yeah.
custodians
Yes.
still have to go into the schools in the summer.
So,
But as opposed to paying rent to the city for it when you
Right.
actually own it yourself, it just doesn't click for me as this
That's-
did
I
not
never
make
thought of
sense.
that
that
bureaucracy,
aspect,
no,
that is-
well, we think of it because it happens every year.
I'm planning an event at a school, and you have to do it before June, or you can't get in.
That's
They-
true, too.
And that's ridiculous. That you're right, and you should be able to rent certain amount of
And it's so
schools
expensive when you
in
rent
the
it in the
summertime.
summer.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be great if community agencies and residents groups together went in and said, okay, well-paid bureaucracies, we'd like you to take this community asset you've built that is A, safe for kids, and B, safe for seniors, and leave those online for those groups to continue to join during the warmer months. I get it, some schools might not be air conditioned, not as many people need to be in an elementary school at a camp as a full, like for every school, but the facilities are there, the equipment's there,
And they're just sitting there.
and they're empty.
Yeah.
And the seniors are now stuck in the park or at the whims of the weather.
Yes.
In the
And that's a
malls.
disconnect, and that's not fair.
It's not.
No.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Gurpreet, Angela, this has been a fantastic discussion, and it kind of went in different angles that we didn't expect it to go. But that's what's good about having these types of discussions. If somebody wanted to get involved in your organization, how would they do that? How would they reach out to you? How can they help?
Okay, through Roots Community Services, they can reach us at our website, www.rootscs, so it's ROOTSCS.org, Roots Community Services, and they can see all of our programs that we offer and get linked to our various events and stuff. And we have a fair coming up soon, a wellness fair. And we in Brampton and one here then in Mississauga later this year. And also through the Anti-Black Racism and Systemic Discrimination Collective. That website is www.abrsdpeel.ca. So they can reach us through that, and that's a collective of organizations from across Peel, as well as institutions. We have the police, the healthcare, education, government agencies, municipalities, as well as regional, that sit on this, and the focus there is to dismantle anti-racism in all forms, as well as systemic discrimination through system change. So that pushes a lot for changing systems that would dismantle these scourges in our society.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's for me. Gurpreet, you can talk about Metamorphosis.
Indus Community Services, you can look us up online at induscs.ca, and you can be able to learn more about our services and how to get involved. And the Metamorphosis Network is a collaborative of close to 100 agencies that is focused on doing what they can to make life better for our communities and our residents. So we're thrilled that you've had us here, and really looking forward to staying engaged and seeing what else we can do to make Mississauga an even better place to live.
And not to worry, there's a lot of information, but all of your tags and stuff will be in the write-up underneath.
Perfect.
So people will be able to reach out to you and help.
And thank you very much for the discussion, and we look forward to more discussions in the future.
No,
Thank you for
so do we.
inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Nice
Great
to
being
see
here.
you.
Thanks for showing up at
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Thank
MIRANET
you.
Talks.
that's wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
much.
Angela.
Thank you.